Hello and welcome back to 1874. It's Monday. We haven't had a game, but we're still going to do the 1874 podcast with myself, Dan Bardell, and my good friend from the Athletic Global, Gregg Evans. We're going to break the show down into 4 parts and we'll tell you what those are ever so soon, because I'm going to be honest, I've completely forgotten as we do the intro what the 4 parts are. You'll also see, and if you're watching via YouTube, a QR code for Gregg's book, Waking the Giant. Now, if you hover your phone over the QR code, you will be taken to a link to buy Gregg Evans and Matt Mayer's book, Waking the Giant, inside the rebirth of Aston Villa. Very exciting, Gregg, isn't it? And very, very exciting to have a QR code on the screen.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing it, Dan. Thank you. Yeah, very exciting. Still a couple of months before it comes out, but anybody who's interested can pre-order it by clicking on the barcode.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about the book later, of course. It is currently masking the show sponsor, NordVPN. So thank you to Nord for continuing to sponsor. If you want to get a huge discount and 4 months for free on NordVPN, head to 1874.io/NordVPN. It's completely risk-free because Nord offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and I used it at the weekend. It is very, very helpful if you want to get some extra football in your life. So do take a look at what Nord can have to offer. And Gregg, the good news for you is that a little notification popped up on my screen saying someone had scanned the QR code. So someone might right now, whilst we do this show, be buying your books. Technically, Gregg, you know, you're making money on your book whilst doing the podcast, which is great for you.
I'm not making any money yet, but it's glad to see that somebody has clicked on it, because I'm sure they'll very much enjoy the read. That's the most important thing. But yeah, shall we move on to today's section? So yeah, as Dan suggested there, that we're going to break it down into 4 sections. Just looking at, first of all, what Villa are going to be doing for this period where they haven't got a game. So that'll be the first section. Second section, analysing the season so far. You know, me and Dan will discuss what we think about what's happened so far, where Villa need to improve, what they've done well. Third section, we'll have a look at some of the players who we think will be the key players leading into the final 8 games, is it? 9 games? 8 Premier League games? 9 Premier League games and hopefully 5 Champions League games and 3 FA Cup games. So still plenty of games to play. And the final section, we will discuss Unai Emery, talk a little bit about some of the things that I've mentioned in the book as well, and go into some more details about the manager. So yeah, fire away, Dan.
Well remembered, Gregg. Excellent to remember all those points. And hello to Matthew Arras, who's tuning in from Macedonia this international break. Even on holiday, he refuses to miss the show. So thank you very much, Matthew Arras. And Jake Ryan Cello, I hope I've said that right, is looking forward to the book, Gregg. So yeah, maybe it was him that scanned the code. Who knows? Right then, let's make a start. Before we do, actually, I just want to say you very assertive there in what you did in going through what we were going to be doing in this show, Gregg. Very assertive at the end of the show last week, fighting your corner, and you were getting lots of love in the comments on YouTube for doing that. I can clearly tell by your face you don't remember it at all, but you said about 5 games potentially being left in the Champions League. You did get told you were negative last week after basically calling Villa to win the Champions League, Gregg, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm sticking with it. You know, Villa are helping me along the way here by staying in the competition. But at the start of the season, I said that I do think Villa had a better chance of getting to the quarterfinals than finishing in the top 4 or 5 of the Premier League this season. And you know, the fact that Villa are there now and perhaps could finish in the top 5 as well is just showing that the season is evolving nicely. I think, look, there's a bit of work to do, a bit of catch up for Villa to do in the Premier League, but Champions League's been good. And yeah, I did say last week that I thought, actually, let's qualify this and balance it out as any journalist, proper journalist should do. I said that the display and the performance from the team in the previous week reminded me, or gave me the impression of a team that could go and win a Champions League, just because it was so more defensive and structured. And I think we maybe I was getting a little bit carried away because Villa hadn't kept a clean sheet for so long, and I was watching that performance in the Premier League anyway, the most impressive one, because the one that followed was against 10 men for most of the game.
Yeah. Right, then let's get into the show, Greg. So you're going to tell us what Villa are going to get up to this international break. Obviously, there's a fair number of players that aren't here that are away with their respective countries. But Villa, for those that are left, Unai Emery, the coaching staff, there is some concrete plans in place, isn't there?
Yeah, so they a group of them flew out to the UAE last night, Sunday night. You know, we know that Unai Emery likes Dubai and Abu Dhabi and other areas.
Don't we all?
Yeah, and another areas in that region. So he's taken teams there in the past. He's taken Villa there in the past, and I think it's a sensible idea because there's 10 between 10 and 13 senior players that will be on the tour, and it's a good time for them to just get a little bit of warm weather training in. You know, Dubai and Abu Dhabi really nice at this time of the year. It's it's warm, sunny, but not too humid, so it won't be too taxing and intensive on the players during training. So it will be an enjoyable break for them in that respect. Sure, there'll be a little bit of downtime for them as well because these trips tend to get that that day or night where the players can relax and do a little bit of their own thing. But look, it'd be a case of some of the newer players, Disasi and Asensio, just getting a bit more time with some of their colleagues, learning a few more of Unai Emery's methods and what's exactly going to work for him. And then there's going to be a friendly game on Thursday against Al Ain, which will be in Abu Dhabi, I think.
Do you think that game's? I mean, I did speculate this last week. Actually, that game's probably been organised for Pau Torres. Get Pau Torres some football. Actually, they'd have probably done it anyway. But it's very, very beneficial for Pau Torres, that isn't it? And I assume as well, there's a lot of younger players that will have gone on this trip with the first team.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one for Torres, but it would have been a game that they would have looked to get a fixture in anyway. Teams that go away mid-season always look to try and get a friendly in whenever they go away.
Because we haven't had a game this weekend either, have we? So, but keeps it ticking over.
Yeah, whether it's a behind closed doors game, it's a game between the two, they split the two teams up. They just try and get something competitive in. I think this will be a free to view for the public. I'm not sure if they're charging to get in, but the public can go and watch. So if anybody lives over there, it'd be good for them to see some of the Villa players in nice warm temperatures. I think 10 o'clock kickoff local time. So yeah, it would be good game for Torres, good game for Cash. Cash and Disasi, can they get a bit of a relationship going? Will they be playing a little bit more together as the season progresses? I quite like the idea of Cash playing slightly ahead of Disasi at times. I think that will give Villa a real solid defensive base, and maybe something that Villa might use to see out games.
And I guess, they might have been expecting a few more to be going on this trip as well. Greg, Marcus Rashford, since we last did a show, has been recalled to the England squad. In the back of their mind at Villa, in the back of Emery's mind, he probably thought this would be a useful trip for Marcus Rashford, didn't he? I don't think many people would have envisaged that he'd have got called up this soon, but fair play to him. He deserves it, and it's great for Villa and it's great for Rashford.
Yeah, surprised me to see him included. I think he's improved since he's moved to Villa. Partly because he's actually playing games and he's actually playing with a bit of confidence. Don't think he's hit top form yet. I don't think he's fully warranted a recall. I'm not sure his form has been that good that he deserves it. But look, fair play to him. Obviously, Thomas Tuchel sees enough in him and knows that he's got the qualities to go and perform for England. Did Gordon get in? I don't think so. Is that, I presume, because of Gordon?
Gordon is in, I believe.
Gordon is in? Oh, okay.
Tuchel name checked basically that it was Rashford over Grealish. Basically,
right, which
I read before we came on.
Yeah, which, I mean, look, the form that Jack's in, and unfortunately not playing many games. He had that little injury, didn't he? And hasn't really recovered from that. That kind of makes sense to me, doesn't it? It hasn't really been Jack's year, so you can understand that. But yeah, going back to Villa, Rashford, and potentially being with the squad in the UAE, I think Emery would have expected that, and it would have been good for him to have a little bit more time with the manager to work on various things. But look, if he goes away and does well for England, then that could be a benefit too.
Yeah, quite a few players as well have kind of had their own little mini break post Brugge before they go away with their countries. I've seen Luca Dean away with his family, Emi Martinez away with his family. I think Watkins has been away with his family as well. So the players, this come at a good time, actually. I think, sometimes in a way you wouldn't want the international break to come now because Villa have kind of feels like they've hit a touch of form. But actually, what I think he does is they go away, they get to be with the countries, change of environment. Some of them will have been away with families as well. It's nice to have that refresh off the back of a couple of positive things. Villa go into that break now, knowing that they're in the last eight of the Champions League, knowing that the first game back is the last eight of the FA Cup. Also knowing, results were pretty good for Villa at the weekend as well. Knowing that if they hit form at the right time, which Villa teams have done previously, if you think of the 10 games in a row in the Championship, the run to get into the Conference League, I think they can be relatively confident that, if they do the right things, could be a really productive end to the season for Villa, and that we're kind of clicking into gear at the right time.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt from your very sensibly asked question there, because I'm going to interrupt it with a Brugge. I mean, are we really going there now? Is that what they're called now?
Mate,
it's not Bruges.
That's Brugge, Club Brugge. The place must be Bruges. The place is called Bruges, I believe, but I believe they're called Club Brugge.
I
believe they're spelled differently. I believe it's double G for the football club and
Brugge.
One G.
Maybe that's me then. Yeah,
I believe that's right. People will let us
I've just always known them as Club Bruges.
Everything I've listened to and talks, what I was told to say Brugge when I did something in the build-up.
All right, well there we go. Well, if you're getting the pronunciation from Belgium, then maybe you're a step ahead of us all. But let's go back to answering your very eloquently put question, and I'll try and answer it in a respectably eloquent way. Yeah, I think the fact that they've just got a little bit of time to switch off from a normal routine, because look, Bodymoor Heath will get it becomes repetitive at this time of the season. It's March, April time. They've been there for a lot of the season. They haven't had much sort of downtime, not much time with the families. The last international break was a while away. Christmas seems forever ago. So it's a good time to get away. And it's quite unusual, really. You don't really get this chance. You don't hear of too many teams going away. So I think it'll work for Villa. I think it will just refresh some minds. Some of the players that have gone out do fear a little bit for McGinn and Tielemans. Played a lot of football and are now asked to go again in the international break. We'll see how their minutes go, but it will benefit some of the other guys that are staying away.
Yeah, and what kind of typically, you said there'd be downtime, which obviously they will. They do work on the training pictures as well. But I guess with so many away, quite difficult to work on quite a lot of stuff. What actually will they do, or is the pure benefit the fact that it's the weather basically?
Yeah, I think it's a change of environment, change of environment more than anything. Getting away from the monotonousness of going to Bodymoor Heath every day. Just mixing it up, a bit of a refresh. Yeah, they'll probably be training at different times in the day because the heat. So it will just mix up the schedule, and new scenery, new surroundings, a chance to work on various different things. They won't be doing much set pieces because Austin McPhee isn't there. He'll be with Portugal for the first time.
About that. That's
first time, I believe. But nothing will really change. Villa were happy to allow him to go back to international football because he did it previously with Scotland, so the schedule doesn't change. The majority of the players go away, so does Austin McPhee. I believe his assistant still works for Scotland as well, so there won't be much set piece work going on, but I think Villa will get a lot of work into individuals about what areas of improvement and strengths and weaknesses that various players are focusing on.
Just as you brought up Austin McPhee, would Scotland be a bit aggrieved that he took a step back, didn't he, because a member of his family was ill, and now obviously he's stepped back, left, and now quite quickly joined Portugal, but I believe the health worries have cleared up, actually, from what I read. Would Scotland be a bit aggrieved to lose him and for that to happen? I know this isn't what we plan to talk about, but just something just popped into my head.
Yeah, I'm not sure how effective his work was with Scotland, because I've studied a lot of his work at Villa and I know he's been excellent with that, but I'd have to double check to see how much of an impact he had on the Scotland team. Clearly they rated him highly and liked him because he was employed by them, and I know that some of the players speak very highly of his work, but whether it had a statistical impact, I don't quite know because I haven't done that research, but there were lots of other countries that were interested in him. I think 3 or 4 other nations inquired before he decided to go to Portugal, and believe it was always a case of never wanting to go and do just the one because he was very happy at Villa, but happy to mix them up because he knows the schedules.
I think the Portugal opportunity is a different type of opportunity as well. From what I read, you might know better than me, but that it's more than just a set piece coach.
Well, he's assistant coach.
Yeah,
he's assistant coach, so it's a bigger thing. I think if it had just gone in as set piece coach, then it probably wouldn't have happened. The fact that he's an assistant, it's a step up, and Villa were happy to sanction that deal because look, Portugal have got lots of very, very exciting, world class, talented players, and there might come that stage where his connection with some of them helps get one of those over the line for Villa, and if that does, then that move will be worth it.
Yeah, great opportunity for him as well. And on this international break, if you could get into the head of Nuno Mendes and Vitinha and maybe scare them a little bit before Villa play PSG, that would certainly be very, very useful. Let's talk about then the second part. Villa are going away in a decent place, as I said. How are the club viewing the season as a whole so far? I guess there'll be a lot of elements that they're not happy with, certain things that they are happy with, but also on the flip side of that, if you'd have offered most people where Villa are today on March the 17th of being in the FA Cup quarter-final, being in the Champions League quarter-finals, and more than being in contention to finish in the league places to gain Champions League football again, when you look at it that simply, that's a good place to be in.
I think so. Look, I mean, 9th place isn't great. Villa have got a bit of work to do, but the distance between the teams that are above them is only very short. So, a couple of 3 or 4 victories in the space of maybe 5 or 6 games can be really defining for the season. I think Villa are in good form at the moment. They've won 5 out of the last 6 games, the last 4 in a row. That's built a bit of confidence and a bit of momentum ahead of this break. There is some work to do in the Premier League. Emery has spoken about the need to catch up because they've lost points that they didn't expect to drop. So there's a bit of hard work. There's hard work still to go because there's 9 games left, and you're 4 points behind Chelsea, 4 points behind Chelsea and Man City. So it's going to be really difficult still to get into the top 5. And Villa are going to have to put a very good run together because they've got some really tough teams to face. What we probably are all looking at the table and thinking is that the top 3 are pretty much guaranteed Champions League football right now. But I wouldn't automatically say that because to get to, for Nottingham Forest, for example, they're not used to winning every week. Okay, they've done very, very well this season, but now the real pressure point of the season, they're not quite used to just doing it and getting over the line. And to stay in those top 3 positions, you have to just keep winning every week. There's so little room for error. It's going to be difficult to see any of those 3 dropping out. Certainly Liverpool aren't going to drop out, but the other 2. So you effectively fighting for 4th and 5th place, which then brings Villa onto their other competitions. Now, if we're looking at the season as an absolute minimum, it's getting back into Europe. Qualifying for European football next season. That's got to be the bare. That would be the bare minimum aim. I'd thought for supporters because they've got the European campaign next season to look forward to, and for those that travel, that's still really exciting. Albeit if it's in the Europa League, Europa Conference League, it's not going to have the same prestigeness as the Champions League. For the club, the aim will be to stay in the Champions League because of the money that it brings. That's absolutely essential. But for Villa now, what's the easiest route back into Europe? It's probably winning the FA Cup because you've got to win 3 games. One of those is against Preston North End, who, with all due respect, are 14th in the Championship for a reason. So you'd expect Villa to get that done. So it's 2 games then after that to get back into Europe, guaranteed. The Champions League, you're looking at 5 games to go. You've got to win 3 of those to win the Champions League, and then to get back in. So, is that an easier route than closing a 4-point gap with 9 games to go in the Premier League when Villa have got really tough teams to come? It's I don't know. The Premier League is very, very difficult. You might find that you have tougher Premier League games than even PSG at home and away. Don't know how it's going to unfold. So the fact that Villa have got 3 routes into Europe still, and we're on the 17th of March, is brilliant, I'd say.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, and you will have watched the cup final yesterday. Newcastle been a long time without a trophy, way longer than Villa, even though Villa feels like it was a long time ago since I was 10 years old watching us lift a trophy. Just watching that game yesterday and seeing those Newcastle fans, seeing the players, seeing what it meant. I say again, the FA Cup is a huge priority for me. Out of everything that we're in, that's probably the one I want the most. And I know you'll have been looking at it from a Liverpool perspective yesterday, so it's difficult for you to comment saying it's great for Newcastle, although I'm sure you can as a football fan. But seeing that trophy could really galvanise Newcastle and really take them to the next level consistently, and that's what I want for Villa.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I was at the 2011 Carling Cup final when Birmingham City won it, and at that point you were thinking, can Birmingham City go on, and if they survive and they stay in the Premier League, can they kick on and go even better? Fortunately, they got relegated that season, and everything went against them, lots of injuries. So sometimes a League Cup victory can cloud the judgment. You look at Liverpool last year; they won the League Cup, and then it all went wrong from there. So many injuries. They were top of the league, if you remember, at this point last season after
I've just
29 games. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Amazon,
So so for those who haven't watched the documentary, Liverpool were 3 points ahead at this point, this exact stage last season. The difference this year is they've got a 12-point buffer, but winning the League Cup is brilliant for Newcastle. They will be celebrating still, and I'm sure of that. And I hope perhaps that can galvanise their season and then push them to finish in the top 5. I expect them to finish in the top 5 now. I think they're good enough. I really like them as a team. I think as long as they don't get too many serious injuries, I do think they'll do it. And yeah, with Newcastle winning the League Cup yesterday, just makes it a little bit harder for teams to qualify into Europe, or a little bit more complex at least, from a Premier League finishing position, because there was this crazy scenario going around that the 11th place team in the Premier League could qualify for Europe unless Newcastle finish in the top 4. I think that's out of the question now.
Yeah, there's some crazy parameters. There was an article on The Athletic explaining.
Well, Villa have to win the Champions League as well, don't they, for that to happen?
Yeah, so. there's a lot going on. As we know from Gregg last week, that's definitely going to happen. So that's one parameter that's ticked off for 11th place to get into Europe.
And one other thing I would say is if Villa win the Champions League, there is nobody listening to this podcast looking at the 11th place team in the Premier League and considering whether they're going to get into Europe.
I mean, if Villa win the Champions League, I think I'll just fly off into the sunset. To be honest, that'll be me done. There'll be no more podcasts. It doesn't get better than that. I think I'll just be on my way and die very happy if Villa were to win the Champions League. We'll carry on this discussion, but before we do, let's hear a little bit more about NordVPN. 1874 is proudly sponsored by NordVPN, so when you can't watch it, we want to help you. NordVPN is a secure and private service which works on pretty much any device, including your laptop, mobile, and television. So if you want to watch some live content, it allows you to appear like you're in another country. And whilst you're connected, no one else can find out what you're doing, including your internet service provider. Beyond this, the service also has threat protection baked in to protect you from intrusive website ads and malware, which is pretty handy for you. As part of NordVPN support 4 months for free, this also includes Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. All you've got to do is go to 1874.io/NordVPN and sign up. All the details are also in the description. As always, we're very grateful to anyone that signs up. We know that money is tight, but if you think NordVPN will help you out, it will also help keep the channel running and help us. Yeah, do check out NordVPN because, as I say, it enabled me to watch more football at the weekend. So it is very, very helpful. Gregg, right then, third on our list was who's going to be the key players for Villa going into the tail end of the season. I'm going to let you pick one player. You have to pick one player as the key man, and I'm going to do the same whilst you tell me who your key player is. I'm going to think who if I could pick one, who's going to be the most crucial. Who are you going for, Gregg?
I didn't expect that question, so I'm going to react. I didn't expect to pick one player, so okay. I'm gonna say Tyrone Mings. I think he's the most important to how Villa's season pans out now. Yes. The one thing I would say though is Asensio could be the game changer because the fact that he's just settled in so quickly turned into this, amazing finisher, can play in the PSG games against his, parent club, which would just be another one of those weird occasions that we've seen so often. Well, not so often, but on the rare occasion in the Champions League. He just feels like he's really settled in nicely and could be a game changer. But I do think Tyrone Mings, back to his defensive best, playing regular, will be the difference for Villa.
Do you think he's now ahead of Pau Torres? Do you think Pau Torres finds it difficult to get back in? I've got a theory. I'll let you answer the question and then I'll tell you my theory afterwards. Maybe the same answer from you, to be honest.
I think he's just going to go game by game with it. I think he's going to stick with Mings and Konza for now. They've obviously got Dizazi as well, who's another option. But I just think they're going to go game by game and manage the minutes carefully. I think that's a key in this, bringing Torres on at times, taking Mings off, or even Konza. I just think Villa are going to be quite blessed when Torres is back and match fit, but it's going to take a little bit of time for him, as we see with Kamara.
I do think you're right. I do think it's horses for courses. That you will have different players for different games. You will have injuries. You will have suspensions. Players will come in for certain games. That's just the way it is. My theory is that before Tyrone Mings got that awful injury last season, the plan was to play them both, and Torres was going to play from left back. I think the issue with Villa doing that pre-January was that they didn't have a player to hold the width on the left-hand side, so that player was always Luca Dean or it was Ian Maatsen. Now they've got Marcus Rashford, who's been asked to hold the width on that left-hand side. It wouldn't surprise me one bit in a big game if you saw Konsa playing right centre-back, Mings playing left centre-back, and Pau Torres playing a left-back, Rashford holding the width on the left-hand side, and they build up in a back three and kind of flip what they've been doing in defence probably since the whole time Emery's been here, really. That wouldn't surprise me at all if they did that, because that would allow Pau Torres to kind of play that libero role and step in and push higher up, but then he's got the added protection of Mings and Konsa either side of him, and then the right back probably is offering the width on the right-hand side, Matty Cash or Garcia, with Rodgers playing as a kind of a right 10. Wouldn't surprise me at all if you saw that in some big games this season.
Yeah, possible. I just think the sort of horror show at Palace might have put him off that kind of formation.
It's still the same formation, isn't it, that they've been playing? You're not playing with three at the back and two wing backs. You're playing Torres as a left back, but then when you're building up, he's playing as a left centre back. It's the same as what they've done for the whole time Emery's been there. He's just on the other side.
Yeah, I've just never seen Emery do that, so it comes as too much of a surprise for me. It's always the right back that builds up for him.
But Rashford's a game changer in that, in my opinion.
But possibly, I mean, look, the best managers have to evolve and change, don't they? So that might be something he's working on for these closing months of the season. It's an interesting option. I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure it's going to happen.
Okay, like I say, that was the plan.
It's who you're sacrificing. You're losing a player, aren't you? So who do you sacrifice with that?
Well, the left back.
That's what I mean, though. But
I'm not saying he'll do it every week.
I don't think that. I'm not sure it's conducive to the balance too much. I don't know. Not quite sure.
I think you'll see it at some point.
Perhaps we will. And look, the more systems that Villa have got, the more unpredictable that they can be, or the more systems that they can flip to during games.
Yeah,
the better. They've got to be, because there's some real challenges coming up. They're going from a night at Deepdale to a night in Paris against PSG, and it's like the types of games are going to be so different, and they need to be flexible to get through all of them.
It's like, for example, you saw against Brugge on Wednesday, Maatsen kind of played as a left 10 on the ball. He was very high, very central. That was something different that we haven't done before. I think Emery's going to know at this back end of the season, you need an awful lot of different things in your locker, and you can surprise teams with how you line up. If you've got tactically flexible players, you can change things mid-game as well without having to change personnel. I think we're going to see lots of different stuff, I do.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I think Villa need to do that. I think they've got plenty of defensive options now, certainly with Dizazi in, Torres coming back, Cash now back, Kamara back fit, Anana potentially coming back. There's some good defensive options there, and a very tall team as well. Yeah, growing into a tall team at times. So that might be beneficial. Still got Newcastle to play.
Yeah, at home.
Yeah, I mean, get your big boys in against them, because the way they loop balls over Liverpool yesterday, that they are a giant of a team, and that might be the way to beat Newcastle if you can win more duels than they do.
Yeah, Agent Cooper says good theory, Dan, but I don't think that would work against the likes of Bacola, Dembele, he's made me say it wrong and hard to say it because he spelt it wrong. Kvaratskhelia, Doué, and then potentially Vinny Jr., Mbappe, and Rodrigo in the semi-final. Pau Torres would get destroyed. Yes, that's probably a fair theory. I wasn't advocating it for a specific game. I just think at some point you will see it. But yes, definitely those teams would not be the time to be throwing new systems at teams. That would be would be a big problem. I did see that Gaz Oaks had the same player as me of who I think would be the key man, and says it's Kamara for me. He's Villa's best player. He's so underrated by outside of the Villa bubble. I don't think people realise how good he is. Villa are an infinitely better team when Kamara plays. I know they've got plenty of central midfield options, and Tielemans is Villa's player of the season. He's absolutely fantastic. But Kamara is just, he's so unique. He's the defensive midfielder in the big games. You're going to need him to be fit, because without him, I think, the big games do become a struggle.
Yeah, great player. Really like watching him. Villa did an amazing job to get him in. Didn't expect him to have so many injuries, because he was so durable during his time in France, and that was one of the reasons that Villa were so keen on him. That's been the only, not criticism, but the only blot, I suppose, so far since moving to Villa. He's just missed too many games. And I think if he hadn't, then more people outside of Birmingham would have been talking about him.
Yeah. Okay, then let's move on to our final section then, and the QR code for Gregg's book has just flashed back up on the screen for those watching via YouTube. You want to talk about Unai Emery, Gregg? You've put that in the running order. I'm not sure exactly what it is you want to speak about, so I'm just going to let you talk.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I thought let's talk about Unai Emery was, and I'd be keen to hear what other people think on this in the comments, is he seems to be so much more animated and angry and moody these days on the sidelines. He's very respectful after games, and when he deals with the press and the media, answers questions as honestly as he can, I think, at times. And sometimes as eloquently as he can, not in his, obviously, mother tongue. But on the sidelines, he just seems to be so frustrated lately. Have you noticed this?
Yeah, banging the dugout, punching it when we scored in a race. I think it was the Palace game when we got back to 1-1. He was like punching the dugout. I think he's just been frustrated with how inconsistent we've been. I think he really thrives in the environment of consistency and grinding out results. If you think back to last season, that first half of the season when Villa were kind of just turning up to home games and just kind of churning out the same performance and the same win every week, I think he wants that control, he wants that consistency, and maybe up until recently he hadn't been seeing it, which was getting him very, very frustrated.
Yeah, I think control's a big word, a key word for him, isn't it? And it's a word we're hearing a lot more in football now from managers. It used to be a case of let's go and beat the team, let's go and win, let's go and outscore them. Now it's let's control the game and see where that takes us. It's so methodical now, isn't it, football? But Emery is a guy that wants the control, and if he's not getting it, I think that's what makes him angry and frustrated. I think if you're a Villa fan, it's a good thing, because
of course,
because look, you've got a manager who has been around the block, won things, managed even bigger clubs, and he's okay. There's a chapter still to be written for him. Of course there is, because he wants to win something. He wants the grand prize. The Champions League. And I just like his hunger for it. He's absolutely obsessed with football, and he's obsessed with this job at hand at the moment. So it's the longest period actually since he become a top tier manager without a trophy.
Really?
Yeah, 2021 was the last time he won a trophy, which was the Europa League with Villarreal, which I still think at the end of his career might go down as the most special or the most unbelievable achievement, because Villarreal were fifth in La Liga when he arrived, so they had the benefit of already being in Europe. I think with Villa, it was a slightly tougher job because they were so low in the table. They weren't in the European competition. I'd probably disagree to say that they had even tougher opponents, because the strength of the Villa squad that had been assembled, very expensively assembled squad at the time, meant that Villa were underachieving. They should have been much higher up in the table with that squad. But I do think overall, one of Emery's toughest tasks as a manager throughout his career would be to get a trophy with Villa. I do think that was really hard. Villarreal maybe the more difficult. So yeah, it's like it's 5 years this 4 years this year that he hasn't won a trophy. So he's probably getting a bit frustrated with that, isn't he? That's why he's itching for one, isn't he?
From that is he's due, Greg. Due a trophy. If
Yeah,
you look at the kind of path of his career, this is about the time he should be winning the trophy.
Yeah. Yeah, look, he's got this amazing record, hasn't he, of keeping a club in European football, managing in Europe for however many years it is now. Is it 13 or 14 in a row, which is incredible. And he doesn't want to let that one go. And the fact that he was able to do it in his first season at Villa is just still remarkable. So, yeah, I think just when Villa fans step back and think where they're at, I think they also need to remember how lucky they are to have Unai Emery. It was a year before he moved to Villa that he could have gone to Newcastle. And, if things hadn't leaked out in the press, might have been very different and he might have joined there. The fact that Villa were able to get that deal done to get him and were so quiet about it and did it in the right professional way, it has helped Villa get to where they are now.
Did you have to speak to him, or did you speak to him for your book? I know you've spoken to loads of people. You won't be able to go into detail of everyone that you've spoken to, but have you spoken to Unai for your book? If you can't say, it doesn't matter. I'll just
there's the last 3. I think that I'm not sure the exact percentage of the book is focused around Emery and the time under him. So there's lots of material around Emery. That's all I'll say for now, because some of the interviews that we did with people were either off the record or we couldn't reveal who they were until it was published. So there will be more to explain on that a little bit later. But the Emery chapters that have been completed already are excellent, and there's so much more exclusive inside information about what it's like when he joined and what it's been like since. So yeah, it's there's a lot more in there, which is good, because I don't cover Villa day to day now, so there are lots of things that I don't write about. To be able to get it all in the book was amazing.
Yeah, and don't forget to scan the QR code if you are watching via YouTube. You scan that QR code, you'll be taken to the link to purchase Gregg and Matt's book, and you'll be doing kind of, I want to say a tour. That's probably not the right word to be saying, because I doubt you'll go outside of Birmingham. Really, I suppose you could do, actually. There's lots of Lions clubs and things going on with Villa, but you'll be doing a lot of stuff geared around your book, won't you?
Yeah, closer to the release date. Once it's out, it'd be nice to actually have it in my hand so that I can take it around places and let people have a look and a feel and a read. But yeah, we'll be doing lots of trips when it's out.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Greg. Looking forward to reading the book as well. I know how much work you put into Villa, and obviously from speaking to you off the record and as mates about Villa over the years, I know there's lots of things that you know and lots of things that you can't report on it that we speak about. So I know you know your onions. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some of those stories in the book and stuff that I won't know as well. It's going to be fascinating. I want to ask you one more question that I didn't ask actually when I should have done when we were kind of going through where Villa are at the moment. And you talked about the need to qualify for Europe of some description. Take you back to 18 months ago, where you came on this show and you spoke about Villa and PSR. And to give you your credit, you were the first person that spoke about it, and everyone told you stop being negative. Can't believe we've just signed a player. I think we just signed Pau Torres, perhaps, and he's coming on here and he's talking about PSR. But actually, you were completely spot on with what you said. It's been a running topic ever since. The club now speak about it every single window. Is qualifying for the Champions League huge in the fact that if they do that, it will just give them so much more flexibility transfer wise? And if they don't, is PSR going to rear its ugly head again? Like, what's the difference between for Villa now of saying qualifying for the Champions League or qualifying for one of the others?
I mean, look, Champions League money is massive. Being in the Champions League this season, how far they can progress is still really important as well, because you're looking at sort of £16 million more every time you progress further into the competition. So I think there was potentially the most you could win, I think, was £150 million. That was just of Champions League prize money. So getting the opportunity to play to fight for that again is, it says it all, doesn't it? That's 3 big signings, or keeping hold of 2 really key players. Villa will have to move players on again. It's just part of the business that they will have to do that. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to get rid of their best players or players that they don't want to lose. But we remember previously the fact that Douglas Luiz went. That was a player Villa didn't really want to lose, and they didn't really want to bring the other 2 in there. Ireland Junior and Baranchea, who Jacob's written about today, and he's having a decent season at Valencia. I've written about Georgi Mamadishvili, who's coming into Liverpool as well, also having a very good season for Valencia. But what we've got to be careful of is, how many Valencia players are we going to talk about before we actually realise that, well, they were one of the worst teams in the Liga for a very long time. So everybody plays their part. But yeah, look, he's having a good season. There was a reason that Villa let him go, and sort of back and forth, they decided that they had players better than him already. Whether he becomes a better player in the future remains to be seen. But yeah, to go back to PSI, it was an issue that when I brought up, I took so much shit for it on this podcast. I remember, absolutely pelted for it, and I just thought, well, I'm just reporting what's going to happen. From speaking to people within the club, it was very clear that Villa were either going to have to sell players or get really, really creative with how they did it, and we've seen what happened. They did both, didn't they? Yeah. And look, when you've got a manager like Unai Emery, you have to keep providing him with the money and the players to keep his project alive, else he will not be happy. And he has earned enough in terms of credit in the bank to say what he wants, and he gets what he wants at Villa. And to do that, Villa have to be very creative still. They have to increase revenues, every area possible. And yeah, to go back to your original question, Champions League makes a huge difference, absolutely massive difference.
I want to say it's kind of it's not the be all and end all, but it's kind of somewhere along those lines, isn't it? Consistently qualifying for the Champions League. You look at Tottenham now, look at their revenues and the stadium and the infrastructure, everything that they've done good. And I'm aware that they're rubbish at the moment on the pitch. I'm not saying that, but everything, they're a well-oiled machine off the pitch. And I know they're a London team and whatnot, but everything good that they have and everything good that they've done has all stemmed from those kind of back-to-back regular Champions League appearances, hasn't it?
And look, the building blocks that Arsenal have put in, getting back into the Champions League when they had a couple of years in the Europa League, didn't they?
It's huge.
It's a massive difference for them. They've moved past the stage of having to fight from the Emirates rebuild and getting money back from that, to then going, not challenging for titles, to then going in the Europa League for a little bit. And they're back in the Champions League now, and they're able to rebuild their squad because of that Champions League money consistently. If Villa have a really, really good run in this season and fall away, it wouldn't be the end of the world if they don't re-qualify for it, because they would have made a lot of money this year from it. But and look, there was obviously the Duran sale as well was pretty big, to add to the Luiz sale previously. And look, Villa will move players on for a bit of money over the summer as well. So it's not the be all and end all, but it will help massively, and it will just mean that Villa can continue this squad building process, but not have to take too much of a knock from it.
Yeah, Man U as well. It's worth mentioning, for them to win the Europa League would be astronomical for them. Their finances are in a complete mess. But if they were to somehow conjure up a Europa League victory, and there is signs of recovery actually at Manchester United over the last few weeks, but if they were to win the Europa League and qualify for the Champions League, the difference that makes. Any team now, you could argue, I'm not talking like Bournemouth. Obviously, it'd be great for Bournemouth, Forest to go into if they qualify for the Champions League. But the bigger clubs qualifying for the Champions League is everything. Spurs will be looking at it as well and thinking, if we can just sneak a Europa League win, Champions League, it's just massive for clubs of the size of Villa and above.
That's why I think it's just so great for Villa to be still in 3 competitions. You know, they're still fighting for a proper finish in the Premier League, which can be really useful for them. FA Cup and Champions League. Man United and Tottenham are relying on winning the Europa League, and one of them, at least, is going to fall short. So, Villa are fortunate where they're at. I just think a trophy would make a difference, wouldn't it? You know,
Yeah,
Nottingham Forest and Brighton are playing each other, aren't they, in the next round, and they're thinking the same. So one of those teams are going to progress to the semi-final, and they're thinking, look, you know, we could potentially finish in the top 5 and win the FA Cup as well. Be an amazing season for them. And Brighton are coming on really strong, aren't they? They look like a team.
Game of the weekend.
Look like a team to be fearful of, and Villa have got them soon. So. Mark Taylor, I'm just going to read your comment out because I just slightly disagree. Torres over Mings all day, clueless, you lot. Fair enough. If you we each have our own opinions, and I love having these conversations. These are the ones where I will never say that I'm right.
Can't say we're clueless though, because it's just an opinion.
These are the ones I'll never say I'm right on, because everyone deserves their own opinion. Of course they do. And if someone thinks Torres is better than Mings, then so be it. I personally think Mings is a better defender than Torres. I actually think Torres would be better in certain other games. But I think for this forthcoming period, it's Mings over Torres still for me, because he's just not had the minutes.
Right now, he's fitter, match fit. He's one of Mings has had injuries as well, but I'd expect Torres to play the Preston game perhaps, but then Mings to maybe come back in for the Premier League. It is horses for courses, as we said earlier, and as just said, there's great problems to have. Villa have suddenly gone from having no defenders to having great options to choose from, and really good defenders being on the bench. So I think it's great to see us in such a healthy position. Right, I didn't plan for this one to be as long today. Obviously, there's been no game, so I didn't think we'd go on for that long, Greg. But we've managed to talk for 45-ish minutes now. So thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you to everyone who's joined us live in the chat as well. It is really beneficial to us having people chiming in with their comments as well and their thoughts as we do the show. And we like to involve the audience that's watching. So thank you very much for that. If you go on to watch this via YouTube, if you could please subscribe with your post notifications on. Let's get those subscriber numbers up. If you're watching and you're not subscribed, please do subscribe with your post notifications on, and give the video a like as well, and leave us a comment with your thoughts on what we've spoke about in this show. If you're listening via Apple or Spotify, 5-star reviews and leaving a nice review or comment is the order of the day, so please do that for us. It's much appreciated. Well done to those that have scanned Gregg's QR code. If you are interested in his book, the link will be in the description of the video and the audio as well, so do check that out. And we'll of course be speaking more about Gregg's book over the next few months in the lead up to its release. May the something, was it?
I think it's going to be June now.
Ooh,
just for various, just because we'd like to include a few words on Villa winning the Champions League as well.
Fair play, Greg. Fair play. You've got to leave a bit of room for that. Is it called what's that called? Is it like a prologue? Is that called the prologue at the end or something? You should know. You're an author now, Greg. I'm sure it's was it epilogue? It's epilogue or prologue. It's one of those two things. Possibly it's epilogue, actually. But save some room for Villa's inevitable trophy win at the end of the book. Thanks ever so much. We'll end as always with a big up the Villa.